I would like to welcome you all in this event, especially thanks to IFLA, Mrs. President, Mrs. General Secretary, the President of the Greek Librarian Association, and all distinguished guests, speakers, and presenters of today. I'm not going to talk a lot, just to dedicate this today events to the memory of Philippos Tsiboglou, the previous General Director of the National Library of Greece, which he was a pioneer and a very inspiring person, and the e-reading room for e-books in National Library in Greece was his job and his work. So I would like to dedicate in his memory today's event. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to this event. My name is Eva Semerzaki, and I will be the moderator of this event today. I would like to call Dr. Chryssa Nikolaou, the Director General of the National Library of Greece, for a welcome address. Thank you.
Thank you, Eva. Dear Ms. President of IFLA, dear Mrs. General Secretary of IFLA, dear Mrs. President of the Association of Greek Librarians and Information Scientists, distinguished participants, it is great pleasure that we welcome you to the National Library of Greece for the meeting titled E-Book Evolution, Voices and Vision for a Legislative Change. Hosting this important event is both an honor and an opportunity for meaningful dialogue on one of the most pressing issues in the world of information and knowledge sharing. This event brings together distinguished representatives of the International Federation of Library Associations and Institutions and Knowledge Right 21, whose presence emphasizes the global importance of addressing the challenges and opportunities offered by e-books. The evolution of e-books is not merely a technological advancement, but a crucial challenge for legislation, copyright frameworks, and equitable access. In a rapidly transforming world, it is our duty to ensure that every individual has access to knowledge, research, and information in a manner that is inclusive and fair. In the National Library of Greece, we strive to meet these challenges through innovative services, including our electronic reading room and extensive e-resources, which offer users access toward a range of digital collections. These tools are part of our commitment to embracing the digital era while preserving our role as a cornerstone of research and learning. I hope that today's meeting will enrich the dialogue on legislative developments, shaping the future of access to electronic information and e-books. Let me take this opportunity to express my gratitude to our collaborators from IFLA and KR21, especially Georgios Glossiotis, as well as to all of you who are participating today. Your presence and contributions are essential in building a stronger and a more inclusive network of libraries worldwide. I wish you a productive and inspiring meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nikolaou, for the welcome address. And the next welcome address is from Dr. Anthi Katsirikou, who is the President of the Association of Greek Librarians and Information Scientists.
Dear Mrs. President of IFLA, dear Mrs. Secretary General of IFLA, dear Mrs. Director General of National Library, Greece, on behalf of the Board of Directors of the Association of Greek Librarians and Information Scientists, I welcome you in my country. It is a pleasure for us to participate to this important event discussing crucial issues on the age of the digital transformation. We strongly believe that any library is the basis of democracy in the society. It ensures the free expression of ideas, shares the knowledge without censorship, provides services without discrimination, especially to populations and regions with economic and other disabilities. The whole concept of every kind of library is to offer services related to active citizenship, equality, democracy, and freedom of speech. Under this perspective, our association minds on the movement that strengthens the right of all to access and apply knowledge for the benefit of society through research, science, and innovation to achieve the cultural and economic development. Of course, both technology and economic situation set the barriers. We are sure the discussion today will highlight the various different options of the problem, driving to its solution. Welcome to Greece and to the National Library. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthi, for this welcome address. And now it's time to start our program with the first session. I would like to call to the stage Vicki McDonald, Sharon Mermis, and Stephen Weiber. The title of this first session is Global Perspectives. And our first speaker is Vicki McDonald. We are very much honored that we have the IFLA President here in Athens, in Greece. So welcome, Vicki. Welcome, everyone. A few words about Vicki, except for being the president of International Federation of Library Associations and Institutions. And she's also the past president of the Australian Library Information Association. Vicki is a recognized leader in library information sector, spanning 4 decades. Her career has included leadership roles in public, academic, and state libraries. And in 2016, her national and international experience led to her appointment as State Librarian and Chief Executive Officer of State Library Queensland in Australia. She understands the needs for a strong, relevant, and innovative library service, and this is reflected in state libraries' achievements under her leadership. Her speech will be about sustainable futures for all through knowledge and information, the work and goals of IFLA. Vicki, the stage is yours. Thank you.
May I sit down? Is that okay?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Just to juggle everything now. Thank you very much for the welcome. And as mentioned, it is my great privilege to be the IFLA President for 2023 to 2025. I'd like to thank Dr. Nikolaou for the warm welcome and also the opportunity to be here back at the National Library as well. I also thank you, Anthi, for your welcome as well. As you've heard, I'm also joined by the Secretary General today, Sharon Mermis, and also our Director of External Affairs, Stephen Weiber. So I'd also like to extend thanks to Georgios Glossiotis for the organisation of this event, and also to Chryssa and Nikolaou and her team. Thank you for hosting. And of course, it's fantastic to see so many colleagues here today, and I'm sure it's going to be a very interesting discussion and debate as well. This is actually my third visit back to Athens. My first visit was in 2017 for the kick-off meeting of the IFLA Global Vision. Was anyone else here for that particular meeting? Yeah, a couple of hands, yeah. So it was such a significant event. It really brought together leaders from across the world, and it really reset the work of IFLA and our role as the global voice of libraries, and it was certainly a fantastic event. And of course, I was back here in Athens in 2019 for the World Library and Information Congress, which again brought people together from across the globe to talk about libraries and the important work that we do. So this, I'm actually, in my role as president, it's a volunteer role. So I also have a day job. And my day job is as State Librarian and CEO at the State Library of Queensland. So this is my building, not quite as grand as the one we're in today, but as a state library, our role is a reference and research library. We're a legal deposit library, so our role is very similar to that of a national library. But we also play an important role with, in partnership with local government and the 325 libraries, public libraries across Queensland. And part of that role is professional development, but also making resources available, including ebooks to every Queenslander as well. So let's start by talking a little bit about IFLA and the work that we do. And this is really very much about what we do: better libraries, better lives, and better world. So we know through the work that we do, we will have strong outcomes for the communities that we serve. And it's really important that we focus on this question of why, and it really influences the work that we will do, and I think also the discussions that we are having today. And our work is really motivated by the fact that we know that by working together and being focused on our communities, we can have really strong outcomes for our citizens as well. So IFLA, as you can see here, is an essential actor in advancing global librarianship, bringing benefits to libraries, library and information workers, library associations, and the communities that they serve. And I think it's really important to focus on the library associations. We are very much a federation of library associations and institutions, and together we represent over 3 million libraries across the globe. So significant reach and significant impact as well. So we have been around for a long time, and you can see here that we were created in 1927, originally based at the League of Nations Library in Geneva, and I had the opportunity to visit that library just last year, which was also fantastic as well. But over time, we've brought both a structure of cooperation and also ensured that we are collaborating on a global stage. So we have really strong relations with the United Nations, the UNESCO, and also WIPO as well. But we also work with other key players as well. And I'm thinking, for instance, of the International Publishers Association, who I think may be represented here today as well. And I was fortunate to attend their conference in Jakarta in 2022, and there was great similarity in the issues that were being discussed and debated at that particular conference as well. So if you're doing your maths, you will see that our centenary is in 2027. And so we will certainly have some significant celebrations for that significant milestone, and I do hope that you'll be able to join us in those celebrations. So, as I've mentioned, we are very much a member organisation, and we work very much in the interests of libraries, but also the communities that we serve. Everything that we do is focused on strong outcomes for our communities and our citizens within our respective countries. We have over 60 committees who progress work in all areas, so cataloguing, metadata, academic and research libraries, public libraries, so many different issues. And together they set standards and address different policy issues as well. Is anyone here a member of any of our committees? Excellent, excellent. So we also we're in an election process as well at the moment, so there is an opportunity to indicate your interest and join some of our committees as well. Also, it's important to remember too, like I'm a volunteer, all of our committee members are volunteers as well, so I really do thank you for the strong contribution that you are making to the work of IFLA as well. We are based in The Hague, and Sharon and her team are based in The Hague, and we were there just yesterday. I can tell you it's much colder in The Hague, so it's certainly fantastic to be here enjoying the weather of Athens as well at the moment. So why an international federation of library associations? What can we achieve as a federation? So I've talked a little bit about this already, the work that brings us together, but also the work that our committees do. But it's really around coming together and being very strong and having that strong voice and representing our profession in the global arena as well, which influences the work that we do. I know that through my work with IFLA over the last 20 years, I've made strong connections that's enabled me to progress my work in Australia and learn from others as well. And there we are, we all face similar or if not identical challenges, irrespective of whether you're living in Brisbane or Boston or Botswana. We all have very similar needs and issues to be addressing as well. We do develop standards and infrastructures that enable us to progress work, and we are, as I've already mentioned, a voice at the international level. That strong partnership with United Nations and UNESCO really much influences the work, but also the impact of our work as well. And that really, through those connections, we are able to develop strong partnerships. And this is a theme that Sharon will pick up in her talk as well. But it's also a sense of solidarity. We know that we have colleagues who are also working in the same areas that we have a great interest in as well. So how do we do this? As I've said, we've got a structure of over 60 committees, but we also provide a space where people can come together to debate discussions and issues. And that's exactly what's going to happen today. You're going to debate some key issues around ebooks as well. We do develop the standards and guidelines, a really strong role in advocating, and the advocating goes beyond the library and information sector. It's about telling others about the important contribution that libraries can make to their communities, their countries as well, and also that collective capacity building. And you'll see that in some of the work that I'm going to share with you shortly. We're very focused on developing skills in all of our member libraries and all their libraries across the world as well. So I'm going to introduce you to the IFLA strategy. Of course, as I mentioned, back in 2017 when we had the Global Vision Workshop, it developed, one of the strong outcomes from those workshops was a strategy. But this year, we've actually revisited our strategy and released a strategy for 2024 to 2029. And I'm going to step you briefly through that now. It was really important in developing the strategy that we included our members, and we had a number of town halls and consultations, and perhaps some of you contributed to that work as well. And it really is important to have a strategy. I know that you would have a strategy in your own organisation. It sets out the vision of what you want to do and how you're going to do it. And that is what we've done. It's really about identifying that clear link between action and impact. Some of this work drives the work of other libraries, and for example, my library as well. And a really important part of our strategy is underlining libraries' contribution to development that I've already spoken about. So let's step through quickly the strategy. I think one of the most important things was developing a new vision, sustainable futures for all through knowledge and information. And I could have already heard this morning that that is really a key role of the National Library here as well, that access to information and knowledge. What I particularly like about this vision is it makes sense, there's clarity, and it sets out a strong vision as well. Our strategy has a number of impact areas, and the first one is around libraries are connected and energised through vibrant global professional communities. And that is about how we work, how we come together to share ideas, develop insights, and create materials, resources and tools for others to share. Our second impact area is libraries are recognised, represented and valued as partners. And I think that would come through, I'm sure, in the work that you do, that each of us needs to partner with others to achieve our own ambitions and also have key results for the communities that we serve. And it's an area that Sharon will also talk about as well. And libraries are enabled to deliver meaningful change at all levels. And again, we've talked about that already. And also it's about building capacity within our workforces at both a local and a global level as well. So underpinning these impact areas is the work of IFLA as well. It's about having really strong governance, a range of projects to progress the work, but also being transparent in the work that we do as well. And I'm sure that you've seen increased communication around the work that we're doing and our governance as well, but also fostering innovation. We all need to be continuously improving the work that we're doing. So this is our strategy on a page. It's always good if you can get everything on one page together. And what it demonstrates is that no impact area is isolated. Everything overlaps and is working towards that common vision of sustainable futures for all through knowledge and information. Having a strategy is important, but it's also important to be tracking the progress. How are you achieving what you've set out to do? And we've been doing that through monitoring our work and through quantitative and qualitative indicators. And I think it's really important to have that balance of quantitative and qualitative. And in next year, early 2025, we'll be seeking your feedback on how well we're doing. A really important part of our work is engaging with our members and getting that feedback. It's important that we hear from you on how we're progressing as well. I'm not sure, was anyone at the WILIC conference in Rotterdam last year? Yeah. Right, some of the same players. So that was when I took up my role as IFLA President. And in my first speech, I made a number of commitments around priorities that we would be progressing over the 2 years of my term. I know you probably can't read that, but all the information is on our website. And we set out some really strong ambitions, and I've been very well supported by the governing board and also Sharon and her team around maximising our financial sustainability, developing the strategy, so we've actually done that and completed it, the trend report, which I'll talk a little bit about as well, having an effective and well-functioning governing board, having closer engagement with our members, and reviewing our Congress model. So just yesterday, we approved a new Congress model, and we'll be sharing that information in the coming weeks as well. So certainly a lot happening, but as I said, the full report card is available on the IFLA site as well. So one of the key achievements this year is the IFLA Trend Report for 2024, and hopefully you've had the opportunity to look at it. IFLA has been doing annual trend reports since 2013, but this trend report for this year was the first major review, and we engaged 2 academics from the Queensland University of Technology, Professor Michael Deswani and Dr. Kim Osman, who actually did an analysis of trends related to information and knowledge, so quite a global perspective. And their report is really a really important tool for progressing. It's all about thinking about where do libraries want to position themselves in the future against these key trends. And I'm talking about things like AI, misinformation, being connected to our communities, those sorts of things. And the important thing about the trend report, it's actually a tool to facilitate conversations and think about at your library association level or at your library level, how you can use this report to be positioning yourselves for the future as well. So it's very much a conversation starter. It actually aims to be generative rather than prescriptive, so it will continue to generate new ideas. And one of its strengths is that it has a number of scenarios which can be conversation starters within your own libraries as well. It tells you about what's currently happening, but also prompts questions around what could happen in the future. And I think what it's actually asking us to do is how can we as library professionals influence in these areas of knowledge and information. And I think, as I've already mentioned, it does identify a number of trends. I don't think I've been to any conference or seminar this year that hasn't talked about AI, and certainly AI is one of the trends that talked about. And so we were very fortunate to work with Michael and Kim in the development of this report, but we also work with colleagues across the world to ensure that they could contribute to the report as well. So some personal reflections on what it means to be involved in IFLA. As I mentioned, I've been personally involved with IFLA for over 20 years. It's certainly been a great highlight for me to be involved. And I think what has occurred is it's really broadened my thinking and made me more aware of what are the big issues for libraries at a global level, but how that can influence my work at a local level in Queensland. And one of the big areas that we're really focused on at the moment is strengthening democracy, and it really quite, obviously in the birthplace of democracy, it's an important time to reflect on that. But the trend report also is influencing our thinking around what we as libraries can do to strengthen democracy as well. I've also developed some really strong networks, and I think one of the great advantages of the library and information profession is our willingness to collaborate and share our experiences, and that's, for me, has what come from being part of IFLA. As I mentioned, we do have an election process kicking off at the moment. I do encourage you to consider standing for one of our committees. It will be a fantastic experience to work with others in IFLA as well. I'm really looking forward to the debate and discussion today, and again, I thank you for the opportunity to address you first up this morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vicki, for this inspiring word, speech. The motto of IFLA is better libraries for better lives for a better world. This is what I would like to mention. Just to notice that any questions the audience may have, please keep the questions for the panel discussion. So I quickly go to our next speaker, Mrs. Sharon Memis, who is the IFLA Secretary General. We are honored for having her here. We are privileged as well. Sharon is a senior strategic and operational leader with 30 years of international experience in public, private, and non-for-profit sectors in the US, Europe, and India. She's an expert in international culture, higher education, and several other sectors, but her current position is the Secretary General and CEO of IFLA. So Sharon will, the talk, her speech will be on changing perceptions, realizing potential, IFLA's agenda for maximizing the impact of libraries. So Sharon, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much indeed, and I will speak from here. Please indicate if you can't hear and it's not clear for the interpreters and for everybody. First of all, I'm delighted really to be here. It's been very many years since I have been in Athens, but I do have photographs, black and white photographs of me being dragged around when I was about 4 with my parents around every single tourist site in Athens, but I would very much like to come back and look at that with adult eyes and drag my own children around, and they're desperate to come. So a great pleasure. Thank you for the invitation. And I want to particularly thank our hosts. I would like to thank, obviously, Giorgos and Chryssa, who I'm sure I've pronounced your name not as well as I should have done, but thank you so much for the invitation, and such a pleasure to meet you. And thank you also to our marvellous moderator, Eva. Thank you so much indeed. So I'm going to talk a little bit, I think Vicki has already hinted at what I am going to talk about, which is actually in many ways picking up on her presidential theme of stronger together. In this increasingly complex, rapidly evolving, digitalized world, the idea that we can sit in our quiet little silos, talk to each other, congratulate each other, and somehow still change the world is perhaps unrealistic. And therefore, what I'm going to be talking about today very much is the importance, both for us as IFLA and for libraries, of working with others in partnership, where we are all bringing different skills, different experiences to the table to build that better world, better lives, and with better libraries, because of the extraordinary strengths and breadth of what libraries can achieve and can deliver. So that's going to be my argument, if you like, going through. And it is this idea that then if we have those right connections, if we have the resources, the right policy environment, then libraries do have this unique potential to deliver on that idea, the concept, which is our vision in the IFLA strategy of sustainable futures for all. So that, I hope, is something I can take you along with. So how can we then, as libraries, really work much more effectively together and with others to deliver even more impact and even more positive outcomes. And I suppose crucially for me is I come from outside of the library world. I'm not a librarian. My background is in cultural diplomacy. I've lived and worked in 4 continents. I have worked in the arts, in culture, in higher education, in science, and a little bit in libraries, but I'm not a librarian. And the kind of libraries that I have in my experience are very different. So they range from, yes, working with the British Library, as I was British, but also going to Myanmar, where our library there is the only place. I worked for the British Council. It was the only place where the children of the junta and the children of the opposition would meet, which was quite unique in that environment. And that comes back to that idea of the information and access for all. So libraries are so wonderful at adapting to the communities that they serve and making sure that they are providing the right space, the gateway, that access to a different universe and a different world. And that world can be so different in so many different places. And that is quite unique and special, that safe space that libraries can create almost uniquely. So that is very much my experience. But coming from that world of diplomacy means that I have always been, as I always say, I'm expert in absolutely nothing, but I know a little bit about an awful lot of things. And it's about being able to make those connections. So I have worked with the military, I have worked with governments, I've worked with presidents and prime ministers, I've worked in the slums in Mumbai, I've worked in a huge range of areas. And that, I think, is a perspective perhaps that I can bring in looking at those connections, which can sometimes seem unlikely in partnerships, but which can be extraordinarily effective. And that is also, I think, a parallel that we can see with libraries, that ability to cut across everything. So I'm looking in on that. And I want to talk a little bit about changing perceptions. I always say that what I want when I meet people from outside of the library world is for them to say, wow, I had never thought about libraries like that. And that is something that I think we are really experiencing, and we're finding that with the work particularly that Stephen is doing. We were recently in a meeting in Brussels, which was quite hard to get, but when we got there, by the end, they were saying, we never thought it, we didn't know anything about this. This is extraordinary. And that's exactly what we're trying to do, and that's how we can get to achieve. Because there is a huge amount of unrealized potential here. And this is often down to perceptions, because perceptions do matter, but I do think we can fix it. Often, the perception of a library is what it was when we went to it as a child. It's a little like thinking that you can be an education minister because you once went to school. You actually need to look and understand at how libraries have evolved, and I often say they are like the canaries in the coal mine. They're the ones that see what's happening in society before anyone else does, and they respond. And that's such a skill that often is underappreciated by governments, by decision makers, by funders. And often funders say, well, libraries, we can't possibly get involved in libraries. That's not something we fund. But libraries are merely that gateway to a whole new universe. Libraries work in areas that actually really matter to build that better world. So how do we change perceptions? And I think that that is a really, really important area. Because if partners perceive libraries as actually operating in that space of literacy, misinformation, disinformation, democracy, rights and access, that is something really quite special. And that's what we want to change perceptions. We know we do it, but not everybody else does. So I want to talk about how this often very narrow perception can perhaps limit the opportunities for partnerships, and how we can perhaps work together to begin to change some of those perceptions. Let's not spend too much time on this, but this is the stereotype of the librarian. And even if you ask an AI program to draw you a picture of a librarian, they'll sort of come up with something like this. Woman, usually of a certain age, wearing glasses, looking rather strict. But I particularly like this idea that you've got a shushing button. So it is this idea that persists that libraries are silent places where books should be admired from a distance, not too closely. And if you're very good, you're allowed to take one off the shelf. But don't talk. So there are those stereotypes, and they persist. If AI tools are producing something like this, go and ask. It's deeply depressing, but go and ask your AI co-pilot to produce an image of what a librarian is, and it won't look dissimilar to that. So there's one threat from AI. So it is that idea, as I said, that people remember what libraries were like and don't know what they're like now, and don't know what they're like in different communities and indeed in different sectors. So it's about this idea that we get kind of put into boxes, and they think, well, libraries can do this or libraries can do that. And it's a little like ministers who always say, we love libraries. No one would ever say they don't love libraries, but we're still going to cut your grant and your budget by 50%. And it's only when you can really make the evidence and make the case to say, well, actually, these are the areas, the policy areas, this is where we're making a difference. So we can change those perspectives, and I believe that we really are doing that. And it's not just us, it's you, it's your colleagues around the world. But it takes time, and it's never ending. You have to persist. And a way of really doing this is to really think how we work again together. A lone voice is going to be less effective than a collective voice. And a collective voice which brings different players is going to be even more effective. And, examples. We were just a couple of days back in the Netherlands. We went to the Tilburg Library, and I don't know whether anyone has ever visited. It's an extraordinary place. And of course has benefited from huge support and investment by the Dutch government. It's an award-winning library, and very much built around the idea of being the city's living room. So it's strongly built around, yes, the importance of books, which are still a key draw, but crucially, it's a launch pad. And it's a great example of how books have become a launch pad for new ideas, new activities, and new engagement. So libraries aren't just about consuming knowledge, but they're about activating it and really helping turn it into real-world outcomes that make lives better. As I said before, this is a bit like me. I'm a bit of a jack of all trades. I can do lots of different things, but I'm not really, if you ask me what am I an expert in, and I would think, I don't really know. I'm not really an expert in anything. I actually think libraries, what they have is expertise, but in so many different areas. And how we change that perception from being this idea from a one-trick pony, and I'm sure the interpreters will find a good way of translating that into Greek, but the idea that you can only do one thing, to, as I said before, we don't do just books. We do books, we do democracy, we do literacy, we do community building, we do cultural events, everything. We do policy, we do the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, and really ensuring that awareness of the breadth of what we collectively can do is, I think, one of the most important things that we can work on. And in many ways, libraries are, I suppose, arguably the kind of ultimate, essential, multi-purpose public service, able to contribute to just a huge variety of different policy goals if they're able. And I think the potential really to build a set of unique attributes that bring a value add to any partnership is absolutely essential. As I said, we build our collections around our communities, and the staff focus on responsive programming, an understanding of local characteristics and needs, and non-commercial spaces open to all. That access to everybody, absolutely essential. And of course, to do this, though, we need to be able to engage, to make the case. And this is what advocacy is all about. I keep talking about Stephen, but those of you that know Stephen know that he does an extraordinary role in leading the advocacy work for IFLA and then for the global library field. And it's important to this is our ability to explain what we're doing in terms that make sense to others. And it's a key goal of our work in IFLA is explaining the impact of libraries in universal terms through collecting meaningful data and making connections between what libraries are doing and wider agendas. And through this, we really need to be able to kind of cite ourselves as key infrastructures, a ready-made infrastructure with expert people working in education, democracy, research, digital inclusion, and more. And it's one of the reasons that we use and encourage libraries to use the framework of the Sustainable Development Goals, because partly that common language that others, policymakers, understand. Whether they call them the Sustainable Development Goals or not, most governments are attempting to achieve the aims of those goals. It's a really useful framework. And talking about the impact, and it is this kind of clarity of message. We can talk, we can shout, we can complain. That doesn't mean that people will actually hear what we're saying and listen to what we're saying. So that importance of advocacy, of honing our messages, of being really clear and getting, if you like, those frameworks of language, of thinking, are absolutely essential to make the case. Using common language that we constantly use, that we share at every opportunity in a way and in a format and in a language that others will understand and can relate to. Again, my experience of working with governments and ministers is that, I hope there are no ministers in the room, but ministers are often wonderful people, but they're often very pressured for time and can be a bit lazy. So if you can present them with some ideas that fit into the policy areas on which they are working, you're halfway there. Don't go into a meeting and say how wonderful libraries are, but actually the focus about what libraries actually deliver that can actually correspond to their needs. It's a basic thing, and I'm sure many of you know that, and if you're the head of a national library, you'll certainly know that. But I think the other thing about libraries is that they are and remain one of the most trusted institutions and professions. When trust in governments is undermined, when trust in institutions, in the media, the one sector that remains high in trust is actually the library and information field. And we are ethical, we are law-abiding, we have a really strict code of ethics and conduct, and we have experience. We are able to produce, if you like, and comment on what is disinformation and misinformation. So I think it is really important to build on those strengths, both the positive perceptions, but also the hard reality of what policy is and what you can deliver. And Stephen, I think, will be talking a lot more about this afterwards. But it is essential that we take that broad view and that we encourage that broader perspective. So library laws do matter in terms of providing a framework for how we operate and creating responsibilities and opportunities for libraries. And they can be a great way of focusing the minds too. And the same can go for a legal deposit. But we need to go, I think, sort of broader than this. And because there are laws and policies in so many other areas that do impact how much we're able to do. And I think that this brings me to, obviously, a theme which will be looked at a great deal, which is copyright. We'll be talking about that quite a lot today. But it's also the case with work around information integrity, digital inclusion, education, consumer protection, and more. So basically, we need to keep our eyes, I think, on the goals that we're looking to achieve, encourage the laws and provisions that help achieve those goals of supporting sustainable futures through access to knowledge and information. And because we get it right, it can be transformational. At the macro level, when we get the right policy settings, libraries are the backbone of inclusive knowledge economies. At the micro level, we see what happens as libraries become centres for innovation, for access to government services, for skills development, and so much more. And all of these things can be challenged, and can be achieved, rather, if we challenge perceptions, if we can create the circumstances and connections necessary to really make that case, but actually to think much more broadly in how we can work together and with others to make the case for libraries as being something which is more than books, but that can actually help deliver transformational policies that build better lives and a better world. Thank you very much, and I hope the conference goes well.
Thank you very much, Sharon, for this really enthusiastic speech. Although, as you mentioned, you are not a librarian, but you are a strong supporter of libraries. And I jotted down a phrase, it's unrealistic to work in silos. IFLA is the great example of encouraging partnerships, synergies, synergasia, as we call it in Greece. So we are in the right direction. Thank you very much. So we briefly go to our next speaker, Stephen Weiber, who is an IFLA External Affairs Director, and of course the representative of Knowledge Rights 21. Stephen is a leading policy and advocacy worker at IFLA with particular focus on copyright, access to information, freedom of expression, and digital issues. He has a strong experience in understanding of working with governments and international institutions, enjoys the fast pace of an international NGO, and has a passion for finding the key insight or solution to a problem. Stephen will talk about, the title is 21st Century Access to Knowledge, Education and Culture, and especially the Knowledge Rights 21 campaign. So Stephen, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So that should work. Okay. So I'm conscious it's Friday, and the first consequence of it being Friday is that I'm getting tired, and so there's a risk that my natural accent comes out, and my natural accent is of someone who sells stolen TVs on Walthamstow Market. So I will assume that if I start going off-piste with my accent, that the interpreters will wave and say, please stop. It's also Friday, so I'm not going to do a blow-by-blow explanation of what the Knowledge Rights 21 programme is that eats up so much of Giorgos' time, and that I know that Giorgos talks about a lot and does a fantastic job of getting into the media and getting people together and getting people talking. I'm going to dive a little bit into why we're doing what we are, some of the reasons behind it, which I hope offers a really useful bit of context for the rest of the day's sessions, just to really understand where we're coming from. So I suppose at the high level, what's important to say, Knowledge Rights 21, it's a partnership. It's a group of organisations, of European and international library organisations working together. So there's IFLA, there's LIBA, the European Research Libraries Organisation, of which Yannis Tsagonas from the University of Patras is the incoming president. I'm sure you all know Yannis really well. And Spark Europe, which works very much on open access issues. We are privileged to be supported by Arcadia, another Greek word, but actually they're Swedish, and their money comes from Tetra Pak. So they're not a digital company. They make their money from orange juice cartons, but it's a successful business, obviously enough. So in terms of, as I said, I wanted to talk a little bit about why we're here, why we're doing what we're doing, why we ask Giorgos to do what he does. And I think the best way of doing it is to talk about three lacks, three needs, three areas where we see that there is a gap in what we're able to do now. So the first one is a lack of voice. And this relates very much to the fact that the work that librarians are doing, I think both Vicki and Sharon have really dug into that, the potentially transformative role that they can play as connectors between people and information, as catalysts, as animators, as mobilizers, who are helping people take the information, take the knowledge that they find, and turn it into real-world change, innovations, creation, better decision-making, engagement in civic, in democratic, and cultural life. There's that huge role, and that comes with a huge legitimacy. The problem is, despite that legitimacy, that experience is not always heard. It's not always reflected in relevant policy processes, such as the ones that Sharon was talking about just now. I think a lot of the time librarians are just focused on delivering for people. And how can we help the person who is in front of us today? How can we do that within the context, within the laws that we have, rather than necessarily standing back and thinking, well, how can I change things in order to be able to do more tomorrow? And the focus of the field is really very much on that immediate, direct benefit that we can bring people. I think a lot of the time librarians are working within the public sector, and working within the public sector brings restrictions. You're normally not allowed to criticize your boss. It's not like the private sector likes that either. But there are restrictions on whether you can get involved in advocacy, in lobbying. That's one of the reasons why associations are so powerful, because there is that flexibility to go out and say, well, we can do things better. We can make things, we can come up with a legislative environment, a regulatory environment, a policy environment that is more helpful. And I think a third factor, and I'm going to use the C word, copyright, a little bit. I think especially copyright is often seen as a very conflictual, complicated area. It's very easy to get scared off getting involved in discussions around copyright. And this is despite the fact that copyright is it's absolutely structuring for what libraries can do. It really determines how we give access, to whom we can give access, how much access can we give. Can we use digital tools? Do we need to force people to come physically to the library to do things? Greece it's not a huge country, but it's not the quickest to get around. Do we force people to come all the way from Thessaly to Athens in order to access books that are here? Technologically, there's no reason to do that, but the law has a lot to say on whether we can do that. So again, copyright really matters, but we're often scared off getting involved in it because it looks like it's just something for the lawyers. It's just a big fight. So we have that problem of a lack of voice. Secondly, a lack of focus. Now, a lack of focus works great for cubists, slightly less when we're talking about providing libraries, research institutions, schools with a framework. We do not have infinite capacity to deal with regulation. We're not in a position where we can read through pages and pages of law, pages and pages of regulation, in order to work out what we're able to do or not. So in terms of just some of the sub-arguments, the arguments underneath here, a lot of the areas where libraries are active around culture, around research, around education, they're often seen as, in English would say, soft law. We contrast soft law with hard law. Hard law is regulation, hard law is saying you can do that, you can't do that. A lot of the time in research, education, culture, governments pay out money, which is great. There's recommendations, there's guidance, but there's not very much that actually says very clearly, this is what you can do, this is what you can't do. It also means that when governments are thinking about how can we make life easier, normally the next thing they say is for small and medium-sized enterprises. There's a huge focus on simplifying the lives of businesses, of small businesses. There's not much focus on how can we simplify the lives of libraries. How can we make libraries' job easier? How can we make sure that libraries can really maximize the time that they can put into providing services, maximize the value of the resources that they have in order to deliver those missions, to provide access to information, to mobilize knowledge for all. So there's a lack of focus on the needs of librarians in law. There's often, arguably when passing laws, we do often focus on tools. And I think, once again, I will use the C word, copyright. Often we legislate around copyright, but in the end, copyright is only a tool. It's not a goal. A goal is that libraries can do their jobs. A goal is that we have a healthy creative sector with authors who can come forward, who can create, who can share, that we have new voices, that we have diverse voices, and that everyone can take part in that cultural life of the community as set out in the Universal Declaration on Human Rights. Copyright is a tool. We shouldn't see it as a goal. The minute we start seeing it as a goal, we change our focus. We're really not looking at the big picture, taking the broad view, as Sharon was talking about earlier. And I think finally, there's often a lack of evidence. There are a lot of very strong, very deeply held philosophical beliefs around copyright and about what it means and where it comes from and what it should do. There's not always a lot of evidence. I know we shouldn't be confused, we shouldn't be distracted by how loud the voices are, about how noisy the discussion is. We do need to build up that evidence base. And finally, the result of this, the result of the fact that librarians, despite being focused on that really vital goal of allowing people to access, to mobilize, to activate, to catalyze information and knowledge, despite the importance of that role, and because of the lack of focus on delivering on these goals, we end up with a lack of adaptation within the laws that we have and the policies that we have. And so I think I already mentioned a little bit about we do have huge potential that comes from digital tools. To do more, there's some really exciting things that we can do. We've talked a little bit about AI, about the potential that that brings to enhance how we search, to enhance how we use information. It's a French word that gets used in English in horrible ways, but to think about how we valorize our collections, that's not an English word, it's a French word, but in Brussels it's used as an English word. How do we maximize the value of the collections that we have? There's lots of potential there that's not always being realized. And this is also an equity point, because if you aren't based in the capital, if you can't move around because of your health, because of a disability, because people are in prison as well, if you can't just freely move around to come to a library, digital offers a solution. If we're not using that solution, we're leaving people out. Digital offers huge possibilities for accessibility. I'm conscious we have the head of the accessibility section within the library here, digital is a fantastic way of bridging, of filling in divides, of bridging divides that previously in a purely physical world are really difficult. But again, we're not always using these. The law does not always support this. And instead, we risk having, again, I'm sorry, this is quite an Anglo phrase this time, a deregulation by stealth, that as we move away from actually being able to buy or obtain collections through legal deposit, and then we have relative freedom in what we do, instead, all that we do is we license. We buy the right to access. We buy the possibility to do individual things one by one, like a shopping list where you tick off what you can and can't do. And this actually raises some pretty serious questions about whether libraries can continue to fulfill their mission of being able to build up collections, of providing access, of providing use, because it's no longer guaranteed. It all depends on how well we can negotiate. What can we actually buy in the first place? Some of those key guarantees are now missing, which, again, is great if you're big. It's great if you've got money. It's great if you've got good relations. But if you're not, if you come from a small institution, if you're far away, if the market simply isn't interested in you, if you can't buy something yourself, then this is a situation that does not work in your favor. But I think also there's a really interesting question in here about, I think legitimately, there are plenty of concerns about what does the internet, what do these new models mean for authors and for publishers? And I think we do legitimately have to look at these questions as well. Publishing adds value. Authors, obviously, make a huge difference. We need people to keep creating, and we would, of course, argue that the existence of libraries is a precondition for many authors to be able to do their work, not just in the science and research field, but more broadly. So what we need to start thinking about is how can we better protect the business and not just focus on the business model. There's been some fantastic work done, commissioned by the European Commission recently, that really underlines the difference between looking at open science, that those publishers who have started to adopt new business models actually don't see threats in copyright reform. They don't see threats in actually pushing for change. It's only those who are attached to specific business models that have more challenges with that. So I think, again, that focus on the value of publishing, the importance of the business, and not getting too attached to the business model is really important, because otherwise we just don't adapt to the digital age. And crucially, I think that's the goal, that actually where we want to be, I think we can't have a healthy research, education and cultural and reading ecosystem unless it's an equitable one. We cannot end up in a situation where reading is a luxury activity, is an elite activity. We need a situation where everyone can access, where we're really taking advantage, we're making the most of everyone's talents, of everyone's possibilities, to get involved, to start creating themselves. So we need to look for a new balance in this. I'm just going to quickly check the time because I don't want to make us run over, and I should have started my stopwatch earlier on. Okay, so what I will do, I'm going to talk very quickly about what Knowledge Rights 21 looks to do. I'm not going to list things in any particular order, so I'm going to skip through my last slide so we stick to our time. What I will do is give Giorgos some homework and tell everyone that look at the folders that Giorgos has provided, because they're great. And I know Giorgos does a fantastic job, but I will finish with the next slide. So in terms of how, I'll do this and then I'll skip through to the final one because that's really useful. How we seek to do this, again, looking at that structure, those three lacks, those three needs that we perceive, that we think exist and that we think need to be responded to, need to be filled. I think firstly, on that topic of voice, what we look to do through Knowledge Rights 21 is build up that capacity. Having people like Giorgos, having people in lots of other countries, it's strengthening that capacity to make sure that the experience, the challenges experienced by libraries are actually heard. We say this quite a lot. Every time that a librarian is not able to support a client, has to say, no, we can't do that, we can't afford that, that shouldn't just be a bad day at the office. that should be an example, a case study, something that you can bring in your advocacy work to underline, well, maybe we need a world where it is possible to provide that service. Maybe we need a world where the rules allow us to actually allow someone who is based in another city, who otherwise would need to spend 6-7 hours on a bus to actually access this. Maybe we should be able to give that person access. Maybe that is part of having a duty to citizens of being a public institution. So how do we actually bring people together, put that voice out there, elevate it, amplify that voice? Secondly, on focus, we do a fair amount of work to support research, to fill some of those evidence gaps, to really talk about what's going on. And I think we're going to have a fantastic example later today with a presentation about where the situation around ebooks in Greece. This will be, I'm pretty sure, completely original research. I don't think anyone's actually done this before, so I think we need to, this is a step forward. We're moving beyond philosophy. I know we have a lot of people who've studied philosophy. I've seen it on Eva's notes for the next speaker, so no disrespect to philosophy, but it's always good to have some empirical evidence to go with that as well. And then finally on adaptation, actually coming up, suggesting measures that will change things. And again, we're not talking about a choice between libraries and publishers or libraries and authors. In the end, all we need is a condition that creates the incentives for people to actually come together, to sit around a table, to come up with a way of doing things that actually works for everyone, that makes sure that we're supporting a healthy publishing ecosystem, that we're supporting creativity and authorship, but we're also making sure that does not come at the cost of equitable access, that does not come at the cost of the ability of libraries to fulfill their missions. So I'm just going to skip through these ones because there's quite a lot. And in the end, it's only Polish people who like the Copernicus reference. So just in terms of where we will focus in future, I think it's a really interesting time at the European level. It's been 6 months or so since the elections. We have a commission coming in that has quite a strong focus on the idea that in addition to the 4 existing freedoms within the single market, freedom of movement of workers, of services, of capital, and of people, and of goods, we should also have a 5th freedom, the freedom of movement of knowledge. It's a really interesting idea. I think it's something that really promises to help break down some of the geographical barriers that exist within Europe. So there's a really interesting possibility in there. There's an acceptance that use of knowledge, access to knowledge for research, for other purposes, is being held back, that we do actually need to look at this. At the same time, there is also, I think, a risk that, I think, as Vicki has said, everyone likes talking about AI. It is terribly exciting. It does sometimes fascinating, sometimes scary things. But I think during this discussion, we do need to make sure that, firstly, the real problems of libraries are being heard, are being listened to. And there is a risk when we start to move to regulate AI, which is inevitable and is desirable, that we don't do it in a way that actually restricts. We don't do it in a way that has negative consequences for libraries and their mission. So I think we are absolutely not over. We are in a world, we're in a period of time where there's a lot of information regulation going on. We need to be there, we need to be heard, and we need to be upholding the things that really matter. So I will stop. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. It was a brief but right way of describing KR21 with the 3 pillars of voice, focus, and adaptation. I jotted down that copyright is a tool, so it cannot, we cannot be afraid of. And then it's important to sit down, as you mentioned. All the stakeholders can sit around the same table and discuss. So partnerships is again in the agenda. So I would like to thank our 3 distinguished speakers from IFLA for being here. We are very honored to listen to their speeches. And now I would like to call to the stage. We are going to the second session, which is the the findings of the research, as Stephen mentioned, on e-books in Greece. And I would like to call to the stage Georgios Glossiotis, Nikos Panagiotopulos, and Michalis Kalamaras. So thank you very much. Thank you indeed for your speeches. Until they come and sit down, I'm going to read briefly their CVs. Georgios Glossiotis is, of course, he's a librarian, and he's the Giorgos. He's the national coordinator of Knowledge Rise 21 in Greece, and also is a member of the IFLA Regional Division Committee for Europe. And Dr. Nikos Panagiotopoulos is a professor of sociology at the School of Communication and Mass Media Studies at the National Kapodistrian University of Athens. And Mr. Michalis Kalamaras, he is a publishing consultant, thinking and founder of e-Anagnostis. E-Anagnostis is e-reader. He's a pioneer. He founded e-Anagnostis in 2008. And the three of you will inform us about the findings of this promising research on e-books and libraries in Greece in the next 30 minutes. So the floor is yours. So Giorgos, will you start?
Hello again. We are going to discuss about the study we carry out during the autumn this year. We knew by our experience that the spread of e-books, the use of e-books by the consumers, by the libraries, by the library users is very low in Greece. We have this experience, but we didn't have the data. We don't have the documentation. So this is why we decided to look at this area to document what really happened in Greece. We have a lack of resources in Greek libraries concerning e-books. We have a very low reading habit in all age groups in Greece. We have some legislation, we have some mentalities in libraries, in users, in publishing sector. We would like to combine all those in one study, in one research, to see what really happens. That's why we start this. This research is funded full by Knowledge Right 21, which one of its reasons is to provide libraries this tool for documenting their position and can act as what they are, libraries to act as libraries. We need to document our position sometimes. So, how we did this research? We create a team consisted by me as National Coordinator of Project KR21 in Greece, National and Kapodistrian University of Athens team supervised by Professor Nikos Panagiotopoulos, and Thinking, which is a company for digital, Michalis will say you more.
Supporting publishers in the digital transformation. Yeah.
And Michalis is a representative of this company, and we have a special advisor for the whole project, the whole research, by Yannis Tsakonas, you all know. Yannis here, he is Vice President of Liber and Director of the Library of University of Patras. How we do this research? We have a methodology. First of all, we were looking for a basic research in the legislation, in the law, what laws says. Second, we have a survey among the users of the libraries, the readers, the actual readers, and we have two types of surveys in that group, a quantitative survey and a qualitative survey, to see how many of them are reading, of the users of libraries who read books, are reading e-books, to see this connection and what type, what audience, who are they, what are they reading, in what age, in what social and economic status, and so on. We continue with a qualitative survey among the managers of public libraries to see their perspective, their mentalities, why they do support or not supporting e-books collection in libraries, in their libraries. Then we continue with academic libraries in Greece, which is not will present today because of lack of time, will be in the final results of the survey. And then we have a qualitative survey among the market stakeholders. Which is the market in Greece? Do the Greek publishers create e-books? They distribute their books in the consumers or in libraries? What is happening and why it's happening? And in numbers, we need numbers. We need to documentate that. How many titles? How many publishers? In what type of e-books? What format? What protection measures they use for that? Why they collaborate or not with libraries, in which numbers, how many titles are available to the audience through libraries, and so on. You will see as the discussions go, all those, I hope. So, the legal framework. The legal framework in Greece is the law 2121 of 1993 as amendment by other laws in 2022 and 2023, implementing in Greek legal order some European Union guides. This PLR in Greece allow public lending by institutions that are open to the public and non-for-profit. The conditions are more specified. The works who are in this right must be legally published, so libraries can't lend not legal published material, and be in the legal possession of the institution, of the library. This is the two main provisions for PLR in Greece. PLR as a general. More, there is a reasonable remuneration for the authors and the publishers provided by the law, in which school libraries and academic libraries, member of the Hellenic Academic Library Consortium, are excluded. They can act, they can provide public lending in their members without paying any reasonable remuneration. For the rest, for the public-funded libraries only, there is a special one-off annual amount provided by the law as a reasonable remuneration paid to the respective collective society in Greece. In this law, there is no separation of the material carriers of the work. There is no distinction if the work is in analog, paper, or digital form. If we consider the impact of European Union Court of Justice decisions in Greek law, as we should do that, and especially the decision 174 of 2015 about e-books, The conclusion, the logical conclusion or the legal conclusion is that the law in Greece allows libraries to carry out public lending for ebooks as well, which are covered by the provisions already said for the printed books, and including to the reasonable remuneration which is provided in the law. So this is the main legal, logical for me, which I'm not a lawyer. I read laws, but I'm not a lawyer. Conclusion. We will see later what is the reality. And we will continue with Professor Nikos Panagiotopoulos for the research in public libraries.
Thank you, Giorgos, for this, for explaining the first steps of the survey regarding the methodology and the quality and the description of the survey you mentioned. So you go on quickly with Professor Panagiotopoulos.
Χρειαστούν ακουστικά, μετάφραση, έτσι.
Καλησπέρα, κυρίες και κύριοι, θα μιλήσω στη γλώσσα μου. Yes. I have to speak.
Due to the fact that Professor Panagiotopoulos will speak in Greek, we advise you to have headphones for the translation.
Και μια σειρά από λόγους που δεν χρειάζεται να το αναπτύξω. Καταρχάς να ευχαριστήσω το ΚΙΑΡ 21 και τον κύριο Γλωσσιώτη για τη δυνατότητα που μου έδωσε να συμμετάσχω σε αυτή την έρευνα. Θα κάνω 2-3 σχόλια που δεν είχα προγραμματίσει, αλλά ακούγοντας θέλω 2-3 σημεία να αναφέρω ενδεικτικά και ενδεχομένως να επανέλθουμε στη συζήτηση. Το ένα είναι ότι χαίρομαι ιδιαίτερα που είμαι στην Ειδική Βιβλιοθήκη και μου δόθηκε η δυνατότητα να ασχοληθώ με βιβλιοθήκες, γιατί μου θύμισε τη συνεργασία που είχαμε, την αρχική, την γνωριμία με τον Αΐμτσο Τσιμπόγλου, λίγες μέρες πριν τη φύγη, όταν με κάλεσε στη συνέχεια της έρευνας που θα κάνει τότε στον ΟΣΔΕΛ, προκειμένου να διενεργήσουμε μια πολύ μεγάλη έρευνα που δεν είχε γίνει ποτέ στην Ελλάδα για τους χρήστες των βιβλιοθηκών, η οποία δεν καταφέραμε τελικά να υλοποιήσουμε. Και μου δίνεται τη δυνατότητα να μπω σε αυτό το χώρο, έστω και με αυτόν τον τρόπο, τον οποίο το βρήκα πολύ συναρπαστικό για μια σειρά από λόγους που ενδεχομένως να επανέλθω στη συζήτηση. Το δεύτερο που θέλω να πω είναι ότι οι έρευνες αυτές αυτή η έρευνα που έγινε σε πάρα πολύ τα σφιχτικά χρονικά όρια, δεν θα μπορούσε να θεμελιωθεί με την αυστηρότητα που νομίζω τη χαρακτηρίζει στο τέλος της, αν δεν είχαν προηγηθεί άλλες 2 έρευνες που μου έδωσαν τη δυνατότητα να προβάλλω τα αποτελέσματα στο μεγάλο πλαίσιο του ελληνικού πληθυσμού. Οι έρευνες που έκανε ο ΣΔΕΛ για τους αναγνώστες και το βιβλίο και για το παιδί και την ανάγνωση. Αυτό το λέω γιατί θα πρέπει να γνωρίζει και ο χώρος των βιβλιοθηκών, οι υπεύθυνοι του χώρου των βιβλιοθηκών, ότι αυτές οι έρευνες είναι σωρευτικές, δηλαδή δεν γίνεται να... αυτές όλες συνομιλούν, όπως και οι θεσμοί το οφείλουν να συνομιλήσουν, έτσι και οι έρευνες είναι σωρευτική τη γνώση και ευτυχώς που είχαμε αυτές τις έρευνες του ΟΣΔΕΛ για να μπορέσουμε να κάνουμε πράγματα και ενδεχομένως να συνεχίσουμε να σωρεύουμε τη γνώση γύρω από το βιβλίο και τους θεσμούς που το διαχειρίζονται, που το παράγουν κτλ. Λοιπόν, πάμε στην έρευνα. Πατάω το πράσινο. Okay. Όχι. Τώρα. Λοιπόν, η έρευνα που αποφασίσαμε να κάνουμε, επαναλαμβάνω, κάθε έρευνα έχει ένα πλαίσιο ρεαλιστικό, χρονικό, χρηματοδοτικό κτλ. Επιλέξαμε να κάνουμε 2 έρευνες, από την συνεργασία που είχαμε με τον κύριο Γλωσσιώτη, να απευθυνθούμε στους διευθυντές των βιβλιοθηκών, των δημοσίων και των δημοτικών. Ο αριθμός ήταν 40 βιβλιοθηκών ανά την Ελλάδα και κάναμε μια ποιοτική έρευνα με εις βάθος συνεντεύξεις με τους ανθρώπους αυτούς. Μια έρευνα που είχε αντικείμενο βέβαια τις ψηφιακές υπηρεσίες και τα e-books, αλλά έχουμε υλικό που μπορεί να φανεί και χρήσιμο για άλλα πράγματα, αλλά δεν τις παρούσεις. Τη δεύτερη διάσταση είναι μια έρευνα με ερωτηματολόγιο στους χρήστες των βιβλιοθηκών. Επιλέξαμε ένα δείγμα 8 βιβλιοθηκών στην Αττική και στην περιφέρεια. Ήταν κάτι παραπάνω από 500 άτομα το δείγμα, αλλά τα ερωτηματολόγια τελικά στη διαχείρισή τους φτάσαμε στα 500, γιατί κάποια ερωτηματολόγια δεν ήταν καλά συμπληρωμένα. Και το διάστημα, το πιεστικό που ανέφερα, έγινε μεταξύ Σεπτεμβρίου και Νοεμβρίου. Το θέλω να πω ότι βάλαμε τελεία πριν από 2 μέρες για να μπορέσουμε να την παρουσιάσουμε. Θα παρουσιάσω όχι τους αριθμούς τόσο για να επιμείνω στα συμπεράσματα, αλλά τις τάσεις. Λοιπόν, το γενικός πληθυσμός, καταρχάς στην ποσοτική μας έρευνα, των χρηστών δηλαδή, στη ζήτηση, που μελετήσαμε, και έχουμε τους ανθρώπους οι οποίοι κυρίως είναι εντατικοί αναγνώστες, όπως ήταν το αναμενόμενο. Το επίπεδο των ατόμων είναι σε ανώτερη εκπαιδευτική βαθμίδα. Έχουν κάνει ανώτερες και ανώτερες σπουδές, κυρίως, όπως βλέπετε. Η κοινωνική τάξη τώρα, χρησιμοποιήσαμε ένα σύνθετο τώρα σχήμα, το οποίο ήταν ανάλογο με αυτό που είχαμε κάνει στην έρευνα στον ΟΣΔΕΛ, για να μπορέσουμε να έχουμε τις αναλογίες και να καταλαβαίνουμε πόσο λάθος είμαστε ή όχι, και αυτό μας βοήθησε πολύ, όπως είπα και στην αρχή. Κατά βάση έχουμε την ανώτερη τάξη και το ανώτερο στρώμα της μεσαίας τάξης, που κυρίως χρησιμοποιεί τις βιβλιοθήκες. Το μικρότερο ποσοστό, φυσικά, όταν λέω ότι φυσικά θα πω γιατί στο τέλος, προέρχεται από την κατώτερη τάξη. Μικροαστικά στρώματα, δηλαδή τα κατώτερα τμήματα της μοιραστικής τάξης και απολεκά στρώματα. Το φύλο, σε γενική προοπτική, θα λέει κανείς ότι μοιράζεται. Υπάρχει ένα ποσοστό παραπάνω των ανδρών, βεβαίως. Θέλετε να μείνω στο φύλο? Λοιπόν, έχουμε περίπου το 58% από γυναίκες και το 41% από τους άντρες στο γενικό πληθυσμό, αλλά θα δείτε μετά ότι στους χρήστες των e-books το πράγμα ισορροπείται κάπως. Τώρα, και βεβαίως οι ηλικίες που μπορείτε να δείτε, κυρίως είναι στις παραγωγικές ηλικίες, πάνω από 20, δηλαδή μέχρι 45 χρονών είναι το κέντρο του βάρους των ηλικιών. Τώρα, στο εσωτερικό του δείγματος, δηλαδή των 500 ανθρώπων, το 23% μόνο χρησιμοποιεί την books και ψηφιακές υπηρεσίες των βιβλιοθηκών. Και εδώ, πώς θα δείτε, μετατοπίζονται όλα τα προηγούμενα στις ανώτερες βαθμίδες των ιεραρχιών που ανέφερα. Δηλαδή, είναι πιο εντατικοί οι αναγνώστες, αυτοί που χρησιμοποιούν τα e-books. Το φύλο, όπως ανέφερα λίγο πριν, τείνει να ισορροπιστεί. Και οι ηλικίες είναι πιο νεανικές, βεβαίως, αυτές που χρησιμοποιούν τα e-books. Είναι τη γενιά κυρίως του Google και μετά, εν πάση περιπτώσει. Μετά το 1993, δηλαδή, αρχίζουμε και... Λοιπόν, το επίπεδο αυτών που χρησιμοποιούν τα ηλεκτρονικά βιβλία, έχουν την τάση των ψηφιακών υπηρεσιών, τα ανεβαίνει πολύ περισσότερο. Όπως βλέπετε, έχουμε 62% που ανήκει στην κατηγορία της άνωτας εκπαίδευσης. Το ίδιο και την κοινωνική τάξη. Δηλαδή, όσο ανεβαίνει η κοινωνική τάξη, τόσο οι άνθρωποι χρησιμοποιούν τα e-books. Λοιπόν, θα πάμε στις διαπιστώσεις, οι οποίες θα ήθελα να αφιερώσω περισσότερο χρόνο σε αυτές, γιατί τώρα από τη αριθμή... Λοιπόν, σε αυτό που διαπιστώσαμε, ενώνοντας την ποιοτική και την ποσοτική έρευνα, είναι ότι καταρχάς μόνο η Εθνική Βιβλιοθήκη έχει πλήρως οργανωμένο σύστημα δημόσιου δανεισμού ψηφιακού βιβλίου, έτσι. Και είναι... θα πρέπει να μείνει αυτό στη μνήμη, δηλαδή. Μέσα στο πλαίσιο των σημαντικών προβλημάτων υποδομής, τυποστελέχωσης και χρηματοδότησης που αντιμετωπίζουν οι βιβλιοθήκες, η παρουσία ψηφιακών βιβλίων στις δημόσιες και δημοτικές είναι ελάχιστη, αν όχι σχεδόν ανύπαρκτη, σε εθνικό επίπεδο. Και όπου εμφανίζεται να υπάρχουν κάποια ίχνη, αυτά είναι ως επιστοπλίστων σε πειραματική φάση. Ακόμα και όταν τη βιβλιοθήκη που βρίσκουμε διαθέτει κάποια ψηφιακά βιβλία ή κάποιες ψηφιακές υπηρεσίες, αυτές δεν αποτελούν τις περισσότερες φορές τα αντικείμενα ούτε προβληματισμού, ούτε μελέτης, ούτε δοκιμής καμιά φορά. Όπου υπάρχουν ψηφιακά βιβλία, η παρουσία τους φαίνεται να μην έχει θέση υπό αμφισβήτηση ή τροποποίηση της πολιτικής απόκτησης του υλικού και της τεκμηρίωσης των συγκεκριμένων βιβλιοθηκών. Το ψηφιακό βιβλίο στις βιβλιοθήκες που μελετήσαμε, και νομίζω ότι το δείγμα είναι αρκετά αντιπροσωπευτικό, και να μην πω ότι είναι τελείως, η παρουσία λοιπόν των ψηφιακών βιβλίων φαίνεται να μην έχει να εμφανίζεται ως ένα αναδυόμενο προϊόν που δεν έχει βρει ακόμα τη θέση του στις πολιτικές των βιβλιοθηκών, και όπου διστακτικά αυτό εμφανίζεται, παρατηρούνται υπηρεσίες οι οποίες είναι τελείως διαχωρισμένες από τις υπηρεσίες του έντυπου του βιβλίου. Είναι σαν να βλέπεις δύο κατηγορίες στο μυαλό των ανθρώπων και των υπηρεσιών. Για την πρόθεση τώρα των διαθέσιμων ψηφιακών πόρων, όπου βρέθηκε, η Εθνική Βιβλιοθήκη είναι μια εξαίρεση τελείως όλη αυτή η κατάσταση, δεν καταβάλλονται ιδιαίτερες προσπάθειες επικοινωνίας και διάχυσης των όποιων ψηφιακών προϊόντων υπάρχουν, καθώς τη διεύθυνση των βιβλιοθηκών εκτιμά από τη μια μεριά πως τα ψηφιακά βιβλία που διαθέτουν εξακολουθούν να είναι πάρα πολύ λίγα, και από την άλλη μεριά είναι δύσκολο να επικοινωνήσουν ένα προϊόν, όπως σημειώνουν, που βασίζεται σε έννοιες που δεν αποτελούν ακόμα αντικείμενο μιας καλά καθορισμένης εθνικής πολιτικής. Η οικονομική δυσχέρεια και η υποστελέχωση, η προτίμηση της στήριξης του παραδοσιακού του βιβλίου στην έντυπη μορφή του, η μη εξοικείωση των χρηστών των βιβλιοθηκών με την τεχνολογία, η απομάκρυνση του κοινού από το βιβλίο, και μια σειρά από λόγους που θα έχουμε τη δυνατότητα στην τελική έκθεση όλα αυτά να είναι πάρα πολύ αναλυτικά βέβαια, και αυτή η απομάκρυνση του βιβλίου που σημειώνουν πάρα πολλοί διευθυντές χωρίς καμία αναφορά στους λόγους, παρά μόνο σε εξωτερικούς όπως είναι η τεχνολογία κτλ. Δηλαδή χωρίς καμία αναφορά στις δομές και στις κοινωνικές αιτίες που παράγουν τη μη ζήτηση του βιβλίου, είναι τη βασική αιτία που αναφέρονται από τους διευθυντές, ώστε να μην εντάξουν το ψηφιακό βιβλίο και τις ψηφιακές υπηρεσίες στις βιβλιοθήκες τους. Αυτή η έλλειψη τώρα συνειδητοποίηση από τους διευθυντές των βιβλιοθηκών της έλλειψης του εθνικού ρόλου στο ευρύτερο πεδίο που μπορούν να παίξουν οι βιβλιοθήκες τόσο στον πολιτισμό, αλλά και τη συμβολή τους στην παραγωγή του εθνικού πολιτισμικού του κεφαλαίου, είναι πραγματικά πάρα πολύ έντονη αυτή η έλλειψη συνείδησης, κατά την άποψή μου. Παραγνωρίζεται από τους διευθυντές το γεγονός της απαραίτητης προϋπόθεσης από την πλευρά των χρηστών, των βιβλιοθηκών, της ύπαρξης ενός ισχυρού πολιτισμικού κεφαλαίου, ως τη βασική προϋπόθεση για τη χρήση των βιβλιοθηκών, των υπηρεσιών, των βιβλίων, άρα και των ψηφιακών. Αυτές οι ελλείψεις τώρα της συνείδησης, η οποία αυτή η συνείδηση, βεβαίως, τη έλλειψη συνείδησης την έχουμε διαχωρίσει στην έρευνά μας, αλλά θα μου παίρνει πάρα πολύ ώρα να πω σε λεπτομέρειες. Υπάρχει μια διαφοροποίηση ανάλογα με τα χαρακτηριστικά των διευθυντών, ανάλογα με το εκπαιδευτικό τους επίπεδο, την κοινωνική τους καταγωγή και την τροχιά τους. Δεν είναι δηλαδή τυχαίες οι κατανομές αυτής της έλλειψης συνείδησης και του τρόπου και των αιτιών που αναφέρουν. Έτσι. Αυτή λοιπόν η έλλειψη συνείδησης νομίζω ότι συμβάλλει σε έναν βαθμό, μένει να προσδιοριστεί, στην αναπαραγωγή της κρατικής αμέλειας, στη στήριξη των βιβλιοθηκών και στην απουσία της εθνικής πολιτικής διάχυσης του βιβλίου ως πολιτισμικού αγαθού. Πάμε τώρα από την πλευρά της ζήτησης, από την πλευρά των χρηστών. Αυτές οι τάσεις, οι γενικές, δηλαδή συνοψίζω για να... και δεν ανέφερα... όπως είπα, το 1/4 του δείγματός μας μόνο καταναλώνει ψηφιακά βιβλία. Το υπόλοιπο παραμένει στην έντυπη μορφή. Το πληθυσμός κυρίως είναι νεανικός αυτός που καταναλώνει και ζητά ψηφιακό βιβλίο, και αυτό κυρίως στην περιοχή της Αττικής. Η κοινωνική τάξη τώρα, γιατί θα επανέλθω, υπερτερεί κατά πολύ, η ανώτερη και ανώτερη εκπαίδευση κατά πολύ. Ένα πολύ μεγάλο μέρος του συνολικού του πληθυσμού πιστεύει ότι τη χρήση των e-books θα αυξάνεται με την πάροδο του χρόνου. Και εκεί βεβαίως υπάρχουν πάλι διαφοροποιήσεις ανάλογα με τα χαρακτηριστικά, αλλά θα το δείτε στη τελική έκθεση. Πάνω από τους μισούς αυτούς τους χρήστες των ψηφιακών βιβλίων έχουν αγοράσει ψηφιακά βιβλία το τελευταίο έτος και όλοι έχουν δανειστεί, τουλάχιστον τη μία-δύο φορές. Πάνω από τους μισούς αυτούς χρήστες έχουν αγοράσει ψηφιακά βιβλία, δεν το είπα, έχουν αποκτήσει κατά το πλείστον μέσω της Google, μέσω των κοινότυπων συσκευών όπως το κινητό, τηλέφωνο, τάμπλετ και υπολογιστή, δεν χρησιμοποιούν όμως τις δικές συσκευές ανάγνωσης. Οι χρήστες των e-books τα προτιμούν κυρίως λόγω εύκολης αναζήτησης, ευαίσθησης τίτλων και χρήσης και ανεξαρτησίας που τους παρέχει από το οικοσύστημα της ανάγνωσης, δηλαδή από το περιβάλλον, το στενό της βιβλιοθήκης, του σπιτιού της κτλ. Ο υπόλοιπος πληθυσμός που δεν χρησιμοποιεί ψηφιακά τα αποφεύγει προπάντων εξαιτίας της άβολης και δύσκολης ανάγνωσης. Αυτό που αναλαμβάνω συνδέεται και με την ηλικία και στην οθόνη, και βεβαίως υπάρχει ένας πολύ στενός συναισθηματικός δεσμός με το φυσικό βιβλίο, με το έντυπο βιβλίο. Υπάρχουν ελλείψεις της γνώσης, της τεχνολογίας, της χρήσης των πλατφορμών που τους φαίνεται πάρα πολύ σύνθετη, και βεβαίως η περιορισμένη προσφορά και το κόστος στα ηλεκτρονικά είδη. Και βεβαίως τόσο μεγαλώνει την ηλικία, υπάρχει και ένα ζήτημα στην αχνοβολία κτλ. Που ενοχλεί. Πολλοί από αυτούς που βρίσκουμε στην περιφέρεια και έχουν κάποιες βιβλιοθήκες οι οποίες έχουν αυτή την υποτυπώδητα ακόμα παρουσία των ψηφιακών, παραπονιούνται ότι δεν υπάρχει κατάλληλο προσωπικό να τους βοηθήσει και δεν αισθάνονται την σχέση τέτοια που να τους επιτρέψει και να ζητήσουν τη βοήθεια των υπαλλήλων. Δηλαδή υπάρχει σε ένα μεγάλο βαθμό αρνητική στην απόψη από την πλευρά των χρηστών. Βεβαίως και το σύνολο των ανθρώπων θεωρούν ότι ζούμε σε μια ψηφιακή εποχή και δεν μπορεί παρά να συνεχιστεί, να αυξηθεί τη ζήτηση, αλλά είμαστε μακριά από την κορύφωσή της. Αυτή είναι οι απόψεις. Επαναλαμβάνω, αυτές οι απόψεις τις διαφοροποιούμε ανάλογα με τα χαρακτηριστικά των ανθρώπων, έτσι, που δεν μπορώ να πω γιατί δεν έχω τον χρόνο. Αλλά μπορώ να επανέλθω μετά, αν θέλετε. Λοιπόν, τώρα, τις διαπιστώσεις στα συμπεράσματα που τα θεωρώ ακόμη πιο σημαντικά. Οι βιβλιοθήκες έχω την άποψη ότι οφείλουν να προσδιορίσουν τις επιχειρησιακές τους λειτουργίες και τον τρόπο επικοινωνίας και κατανόησης μεταξύ του προσωπικού που τα στελεχώνει και του κοινού. Υπάρχει μια τελείως διαφοροποίητη εικόνα στο μυαλό πολλών διευθυντών για το κοινό, όπως λέμε, οι γυναίκες, οι άντρες κτλ. Όσο μπορεί κανείς να σκεφτεί για τις γυναίκες με μια κατηγορία μία μόνο, αλλά τόσο μπορεί κανείς να κάνει πολιτική κτλ. Και να διευθύνει έναν οργανισμό με μια κατηγορία μόνο, των χρηστών. Δηλαδή, όσο σχέση έχει μια κυρία της ΕΚΑΛΤ, μια κυρία στο πέραμα, αλλά τόσο σχέση έχει μια γυναίκα η οποία έχει βγάλει τα πτυχιακά και διδακτορικό από μια κυρία η οποία πάει για να πάρει ένα βιβλίο να περάσει το βράδυ της. Πρέπει λοιπόν οι βιβλιοθήκες, νομίζω, φαίνεται να έχουν την ανάγκη να προβούν σε αλλαγή στην οργανωσιακή τους κουλτούρα, που θα αποτελέσει και τη βάση για την αποδοχή των νέων κοινωνικών και οικονομικών φαινομένων που σταδιακά τις χωρούν στο χώρο τους από άλλη είσοδο και που εγκαθιδρύονται στην ελληνική ψηφιακή αγορά. Φαίνεται να υπάρχει μια ανάγκη να προσδιορίσουν το ρόλο τους και να εξετάσουν ποιες υπηρεσίες τη χρήζουν τα αναβάθμισης και να προβούν σε ανάλογες αλλαγές, καθώς και σε ποιες νέες υπηρεσίες της προστιθέμενης αξίας θα πρέπει να αναπτύξουν. Υπάρχει λοιπόν ένα μείζον διακύβευμα ότι υπάρχει μια τάση, τη συνεχής τάση και θα συνεχίσει αυτή, αν δεν θα τελειώσει η τεχνολογική επανάσταση αυτής της ψηφιακής εποχής, να αντιμετωπίσουν τη συνεχώς τα αυξανόμενη τη ζήτηση χρηστών και ψηφιακές υπηρεσίες, οι οποίες θα προσαρμόζονται στις ανάγκες τους. Και αυτό λοιπόν θα τα οδηγήσει, κατά την άποψή μου, στην ανάπτυξη αυτών των υπηρεσιών που ανέφερα, που θα προσθέσουν ταξία στον οργανισμό των βιβλιοθηκών και θα τους δώσει και ένα ανταγωνιστικό πλεονέκτημα, αν το θέλουν, στο σύστημα των θεσμών παραγωγής του εθνικού πολιτισμικού κεφαλαίου. Θεωρώ, τώρα με μια μεγάλη συζήτηση θα μπορούσα να αναπτύξω τα απόψη, γιατί έχω τώρα πια μια πιο συγκεκριμένη άποψη για το σημαντικότερο των βιβλιοθηκών στην παραγωγή του εθνικού πολιτισμικού κεφαλαίου και και ποια είναι την πραγματική τους θέση, η αντικειμενική στα πράγματα και στα μυαλά, και αυτών που τις υπηρετούν και αυτών που τις αντιμετωπίζουν και τις διαχειρίζονται σε επίπεδο κυβερνητικό. Αυτό είναι μια άλλη συζήτηση, μπορούμε να επανέλθουμε. Νομίζω ότι υπάρχει λαμπρό μέλλον σε αυτό το χώρο που φαντάζομαι το ξέρεις καλύτερα από μένα, αλλά νομίζω ότι δεν υπάρχουν και αυτό που ακούγα το πρωί, ότι μπορεί να φτιάξουν τον κόσμο καλύτερα, προφανώς, στο προηγούμενο τραπέζι, ένα κόσμο καλύτερο, πιο δημοκρατικό κτλ. Αλλά απουσιάζει, κατά την άποψή μου, ένας πολύ συστηματικός αναστοχασμός των ανθρώπων που είναι μες στο χώρο. Καμιά φορά τον βλέπω τον αναστοχασμό να είναι, θα τολμήσω να πω, για να προκαλέσω μια συζήτηση κυρίως, δεν είμαι εδώ για να λειτουργήσω προς καταλήτη σε μια συζήτηση, αν μπορώ. Νομίζω ότι σε πολλές περιπτώσεις ο αναστοχασμός αποθείται, δηλαδή είναι σαν να μην θέλει κάποιος να καταλάβει τι κάνει με έναν τρόπο. Πετάγεται πάρα πολύ συχνά την μπάλα εκτός, που εκείνη η μπάλα, αλλά έχουμε και μια συμβολή σε αυτό το πράγμα. Λοιπόν, τώρα, από την πλευρά λοιπόν της ζήτησης, μια διαπίστωση θα πρέπει να έχουμε στο μυαλό μας ότι και στα ψηφιακά τη βιβλία, όσο πιο νέος είναι, μάλλον κυρίως στα ψηφιακά, τόσο πιο νέος είναι το χρήστης και όσο μεγαλύτερο είναι το πολιτισμικό του κεφάλαιο, το εκπαιδευτικό του κεφάλαιο, όσο προέρχεται από μια οικογένεια η οποία έχει ένα ισχυρό πολυσημικό κεφάλαιο, τόσες οι πιθανότητες θα αυξάνονται, τόσο αυξάνουν οι πιθανότητες να είναι και αυτός που θα ζητήσει το ψηφιακό βιβλίο και είναι αυτός που θα το καταναλώσει. Αυτό είναι ακόμα μια φορά μια αναλογία όπως έγινε και στην έρευνά μας μεγάλη για τους αναγνώστες, που μπαίνει και μεταβλητή βεβαίως της νεανικότητας, φυσικά, που έχουν μια μεγαλύτερη εξοικείωση. Και βεβαίως όσο η καταγωγή, όσο πιο αρχαίο είναι, όσο πιο παλιό είναι το κεφάλαιο της οικογένειας, το πολιτισμικό, τόσο περισσότερο το νέος έχει την πιθανότητα να διαβάσει και ψηφιακά. Λοιπόν, παρατηρείται λοιπόν μια συνεχής διεύρυνση του ψηφιακού αναγνωστικού κοινού και μια εντατικοποίηση τα τελευταία χρόνια των συστηματικών ψηφιακών τα αναγνωστών. Από αυτούς δηλαδή που καταναλώνουν, όσο περνάει το χρόνο, εντατικοποιούν και την ψηφιακή ανάγνωση. Λοιπόν, αυτή τη τάση φαίνεται ότι θα συνεχιστεί, καθώς υπάρχει μια τάση στον πληθυσμό να αναπαράγει τη θέση του, την κοινωνική του θέση μέσω του εκπαιδευτικού συστήματος, άρα να επενδύει το μέλλον του μέσα από την εκπαίδευση, σε συνδυασμό με την ψηφιακή επανάσταση, αυτό που δεν μπορεί παρά να συνεχιστεί και να ενταθεί. Θέλω να πω τη ψηφιακή τη ζήτηση του βιβλίου και της ανάγνωσης. Από τη σύνθεση τώρα που μελετήσαμε, την παρουσιάζουμε. Παρουσιάζεται ένα φαινόμενο του ψηφιακού, όπως το ονομάζετε και εσείς νομίζω, εγγραμματισμού. Δηλαδή, ενώ μπορούμε όλοι να διαβάσουμε τη ψηφιακά, μόνο κάποιοι διαβάζουν. Άρα, αυτό είναι, εκεί θα πρέπει το οποίο ασκούν την πολιτική να δουν τους παράγοντες που αναφέραμε, ώστε να δράσουν, αν θελήσουν, να αυξηθεί τη τάση, τη ζήτηση του ψηφιακού του βιβλίου, θέλω να πω σε επίπεδο της πολιτικής. Αυτό λοιπόν που είναι κατανεμημένο άνισα στον πληθυσμό δεν είναι η ίδια ψηφική ανάγνωση, έτσι. Είναι τη τάση, τη ροπή, τη θέληση, τη αγάπη για την ψηφική ανάγνωση πάλι, όπως είναι και στην ανάγνωση τη γενικότερα. Με άλλα λόγια, τη διάθεση που γεννά την ψηφική ανάγνωση, την ανάγκη δηλαδή για ψηφική ανάγνωση, δεν είναι τίποτα άλλο παρά, επειδή είναι πάλι στο νεανικό κοινό, είναι πάλι το προϊόν μιας εκπαίδευσης. Είναι αυτό που λέμε και γενικότερα στο διάβασμα της καλλιέργειας, της αγωγής δηλαδή, με έναν τρόπο, στο ψηφιακό. Εμφανίζεται το ότι αν κάποιος δεν έχει την ανάγκη, δεν διαθέτει την ανάγκη για να διαβάσει, δεν θα διαβάσει ούτε και ψηφιακά φυσικά, έτσι. Τώρα, το ψηφιακό βιβλίο εντάσσεται για να ζητηθεί στο ευρύτερο βιωτικό ύφος των καταναλωτών. Ένα βιωτικό ύφος το οποίο καθορίζεται από τις συνθήκες ύπαρξης των καταναλωτών. Και όπως είπαμε, όσο πιο κοινωνικά και πολιτισμικά και ενισχυμένο είναι το περιβάλλον του χρήστη, τόσο περισσότερο φαίνεται να χρησιμοποιεί το e-books και το audiobooks. Άρα, τη διάδοση της ψηφιακής ανάγνωσης, άλλη μια φορά, δεν θα είναι ποτέ απόρρια μιας μηχανικής προσφοράς. Έτσι, δηλαδή, δεν αρκεί να βάλεις μόνο τα ψηφιακά βιβλία και να σου έρθει αυτός που θα ζητήσει το ψηφιακό του βιβλίο. Αυτό το πράγμα παραγνωρίζεται ούτως τι άλλως γενικότερα και στην πολιτική, την πολιτιστική, αλλά και σε επίπεδο των ανθρώπων που διοικούν τους οργανισμούς που τα διαχειρίζονται τα βιβλία ή τα προωθούν κτλ. Το ψηφιακό βιβλίο κοστίζει με την ευρένεια του όρου, αλλά το περιεχόμενο της λέξης κοστίζει διαφοροποιείται με βάση τις αντιληπτικές δομές των χρηστών, δομές οι οποίες παράγονται από τα κεφάλαια τα οποία σας ανέφερα. Τελειώνω. Άρα, τη φέρπουσα αντίληψη που υπάρχει ακόμα και στους διευθυντές των βιβλιοθηκών και στους ανθρώπους οι οποίοι που διαχειρίζονται τον κλάδο του βιβλίου, ότι δηλαδή αρκεί να φέρουμε το ψηφιακό ή να φέρουμε τα βιβλία κτλ. Δεν θα αλλάξει την κατάσταση του ψηφιακού μη εγγραμματισμού που χαρακτηρίζεται, από τον οποίο χαρακτηρίζεται αυτή τη στιγμή η χώρα μας. Κάθε γραπτό του μήνυμα, είτε είναι ψηφιακό είτε είναι σε έντυπη μορφή, δεν μπορεί να πάρει ένα νόημα παρά σε κεφάλους οι οποίοι είναι προδιατεθειμένοι να το διαβάσουν. Έτσι. Τόσο και να αυξήσεις το volume, την ένταση, το λέω πάρα πολύ συχνά, την ένταση στο ηχείο σε κάποιον για να ακούσει, όταν είναι τυφός δεν θα ακούσει. Γι' αυτό το λέω σε μια πολιτική του marketing, η οποία φαίνεται να κυριαρχεί τα πάντα πια, ότι αρκεί να είμαστε μαζί, να ακούμε, να μιλάμε κτλ. Λοιπόν, υπάρχει ένας τεράστιος πληθυσμός, ο οποίος είναι εκτός όλων αυτών των πολιτικών και πολύ περισσότερο ακόμα των ψηφιακών, της ψηφιακής πολιτικής. Λοιπόν, άρα πιστεύω ότι τέτοιες έρευνες είναι τα απαραίτητες. Κάναμε και μια τελευταία, και κλείνω με αυτό, κάναμε και μια μικρή έρευνα στην Εθνική Βιβλιοθήκη στο εσωτερικό των χρηστών, κάποιες συνεντεύξεις της βάθος με τους χρήστες των ψηφιακών για τον τρόπο που χρησιμοποιούν, πώς, τι θέλουν να αλλάξει κτλ. Αλλά αυτό δεν είναι ακόμα έτοιμο. Θα υπάρξει στην τελική έκθεση κάποια ίχνευση έρευνας που ελπίζω να συνεχίσει. Σας ευχαριστώ πολύ για τον χρόνο και την προσοχή.
Thank you, Professor Panagiotopoulos, for this intuitive description of the results. We are going to continue with Mr. Michalis Kalamares, and then we finish with this session.
So, thank you very much. I'm going to talk more about the e-book market, also the e-lending model, mostly followed by the National Library of Greece. Eva already mentioned that actually I'm personally involved into e-books since 2008, and I think my first panel, it was, on e-lending, was in 2013, while this building was still under construction, but still there were the plans back then of having an e-lending service for the National Library. And also I have to say that I am not just writing about it. I work for a tech company called Thinking, and I am proud of not just being involved in the, let's say, more strategic consulting, marketing aspects of the ebook market, but also have done some HTML and CSS editing myself for EPUB files, though I'm not definitely a developer, just to make it clear. So you already have heard the news. E-books in Greece are quite a limited market. Thus, this doesn't mean that the Greek book market in general doesn't feel all these waves of digital transformation, if not digital disruption. Social media for like 10-15 years are huge. The Greek publishers are really heavily invested in social media. Since around 2010, we'll talk about it more, of course, in the coming minutes. We have ebooks. Two other milestones not so much celebrated, but still very important, I believe, is that since 2015, we have much more card and online payments due to the capital controls of the time, due to the Greek debt crisis. Maybe you have heard about it. And another unintended consequence was the pandemic, which made e-commerce really, mainstream. These are all related to ebooks, especially when we are talking about the market, which is also about buying. It's not about just accessing. And for the last 3 years, we have an audiobooks market, 2,500 audiobooks and maybe more with 3 major platforms. And the last 2 years, like everybody else, we are talking about AI, and many people are trying to use AI in their daily work. That doesn't mean to say that, in general, we are not, by European standards at least, We are not really high on the digital skills and so on, but things are improving, I believe. What is critical to know, talking about digital, is that Greek publishing companies are mostly family-owned, family-run, and independent, which means that they have some quite limited access to capital and experts, but this gives also some flexibility, very much dependent on a younger generation taking on the publishing house, obviously. That said, I believe there is dynamism. The influx of new publishers and booksellers continues, and fixed book price and Greece being not so prominent, not being a priority for big tech, gives some room for maneuver, some time to adopt on your own. So the general picture, let's say, for e-books in Europe is this. It is like 12 to 13% of the market. This is the data presented by the Federation of European Publishers. It mostly reflects, we have to be clear about it, Western European numbers, including the UK, because in Eastern European countries, and Greece in that respect is a Eastern European country, don't really have much data. And of course, which is, I have to say, 12 to 13%, it is quite an important number. I mean, it's not a US number, but still. And of course, between countries, things are quite different. And this little number there, 3.5 and growing, is about audiobooks. Now, in Greece and in Greek, situation is quite different, of course. These numbers you see, I have relied on the database of OSDEL and OSDELnet, now rebranded as BookPoint. I believe there are quite, some things are not captured in this data, but still the number for ebooks in Greek is 13,250. This number also reflects the ebooks considered out of print, which it shouldn't make much sense, but it does, because I think also that from a library perspective, it is not important just if it is available to buy it, but you still need to preserve it if it's not available anymore. Like 2/3 of it are EPUBs, and to really understand this number, we have to have in mind that every year for the last 15 years, we have more than 10,000 new books in Greek. So it is mostly a year's worth of print book. That's the number of our ebooks. Not much, that means. Also, according to BookPoint OSDELnet database, these books have been published by around 100 publishers. And of course, it is not very easy to say how many publishers are active in Greece. Probably a number like 800 is a good number, because of course there are many others who are not really active. What is important is this curve. So what we see is that ebook production starts in 2009 and it takes off. It has some very good years, let's say, in the early 2010s. But then it decreases considerably. It gets a new push from the pandemic. So especially 2021 is the best year in terms of ebook production. It is at around 1,250 new titles. Then it subsides a bit, but still it is on a higher level compared to pre-pandemic. So all these years, and I'm talking a lot about production because we don't really have data for sales. So it is an indicator, it's not as a direct indicator as sales, but still. So it is important in Greece that the production has become easier. Greek fonts have been better supported by programs like InDesign. Still, we lack an emphasis on quality control and accessibility, no doubt. EPUB, as we have seen, is the default format, but it's not universally adopted, as it is demonstrated by a large number of PDFs still available. Also, it is important to say that about half of the 13,000 books we've mentioned is actually produced by 5 publishers, which means that many publishers do not have ebooks at all. Some of them are key publishers if you are a bookish person. And also are key publishers if you are a library, and which obviously means you want to carry that the books are not just commercially important, but are culturally important. And all this creates an inconsistency that even that publishers who do care about publishing ebooks sometimes don't deprioritize it. So it is not, the first task of the day, which obviously creates a vicious cycle. So there are no many new ebooks. Not all books are available in an electronic format. The readers don't really, because there is no availability, the readers don't buy them, and so on and so forth. So now we come, I believe, to the weakest link of the Greek ebook market, which is, I would say, distribution and retail. So there is no aggregator, so to speak. There is one which is actually frozen, I would call it that way. And that poses an important problem. For example, if you want to start a bookstore, you have to collect the ebooks by yourself. Or like a school librarian was asking me the other day, he wants to have Greek ebooks for his school library, a private school, which is not really possible. First, in terms of aggregation, and also in terms of apps. The key retailers are mostly Apple books, and the publishers' websites, the publishers' e-shops. Kobo is much more prominent. It's more actively trying to engage Greek publishers, but still, it's not as visible as it should be. And there is a persistence of Adobe DRM, also used by in the e-reading room of the National Library of Greece, which is kind of outdated in terms, first of all, of protection, but also really a headache to implement and to use it as a reader. The business model, like most other places, is a la carte, which means paper download, no subscriptions. And there is some availability of e-ink devices like Kindle and Kobo, just to make it clear what I mean. But it is unofficial. It's not, really supported. You cannot really go into, an electronics shop and buy one, or before buying, see how it looks and how it is to read on such a device. Overall, I would say that the problem is that we lack an integrated platform by a local player. Either it be, totally on its own, or it be by cooperation with international, big tech partner like Kobo and Fnac and so on. Coming to the prices, the good thing is that, after so many years, and this has to do with an EU directive, we have 6% VAT on ebooks, like on p-books. An Australian report says that the book prices are comparable. To my understanding, to my research, that's not exactly the truth. It is lower, but still the problem is that everything is dependent on p-book prices, on the print books, which doesn't really make sense and creates a barrier. So, ebook sales. The consensus is that less than 1%. We say that for many, many years. I'm not sure that's exactly true, but I don't have the data to back up any other conclusion. The thing is that there is considerable more interest and more sales when it comes to genre fiction, business, self-help, and even some academic books, which are expensive and bulk, and of course you don't just need to read them, you need to annotate them and search through them. Professor Panagiotopoulos' research has pointed to my other bullets, which is that readers in general report reading more ebooks in foreign languages especially in English, and buying e-ink devices. And most importantly, they report that they read ebooks more than they buy them. So that one in the 4 users of libraries reads ebooks. That's an important number, I believe. It is just for library users, but this is an important number. So which means it is a lot of people, actually. And also, from these people who read ebooks and are users of libraries, half of them have bought an ebook in the last year. Others, I suppose, have downloaded not for very legitimate sources, but that is also the problem of not having a very nice platform so they can access it legally. So why is the Greek ebook market limited? According to the publishers, this has to do with a lack of a platform, a single point for readers to buy books, as publisher Argyris Kastagnotis, also the audience, has told me. And Elena Patakis also stressed the importance of timing. So there was a window of opportunity in the early 2010s, to really have a platform. We missed that opportunity, and this is the result. And also the lack of e-ink devices, as again Argyris Kastagnotis has mentioned, which is important especially for readers who read a lot of books. Let me come to say a few things. I mean, in the audience we have people who have actually created this model. So yeah, I'll conclude. So the only platform we have for e-lending in Greece is the e-reading room by National Library of Greece. There are a couple of caveats to that. One is that places like Goethe Institute and Cervantes have access to an e-lending platform, but not for books in Greek, which is something else. And there are some libraries in Greece who may have a few tablets or an ink device, but they do not actually lend e-books, and it's not anyway systematic. So Reading Room was a 2-year project, a pilot project, but it has been extended effectively. It has actually a good number of titles, considering that we have 12,000 to 13,000 e-books. They have 2,600. We have some data for the loans, like there is at least a 4,000 people user base. It is based on licenses, so 5 simultaneous loans per title, and so on. I don't get right now into the specifics. It is a website, so there is no app, which creates some problems. So there are no devices. And of course, it's available to tax residents in Greece, so which is also mostly a problem, first of all, for people who do not have these tax codes, but also if you are not an adult. And the idea is that this is a platform that it is a champion, let's say, for all the network of Greek libraries, which is all the Greek libraries in Greece. Interestingly enough, this, at least for publishers who are part of it, they are happy with the model, with this license model, which means also that they want to probably contribute more books. Yeah, I'll conclude very shortly. So Elena Patakis said that, for example, it could also provide all the books of the publisher. But other publishers, like Argyris Kastagnotis, are more cautious about actually e-lending, and they find more merit for the libraries to lend the reading devices and organize activities around e-books. So there is, I believe, a new urgency for e-books for all these reasons, for literacy, for tackling digital divide, accessibility, climate crisis, even for economic terms, like the cost of paper or supply chain strains, or licensing your content to AI platforms, also some legal imperatives. And there is an opportunity for libraries to really maybe spearhead e-book adoption in Greece. For me, this is at stake, actually. Ljubljana Reading Manifesto last year put a strong emphasis on the importance of higher level reading. And I believe that the key question is how screens are perceived as important and suitable for higher level, long form, immersive reading too. And I think there is a room for that to play, a lot of room to do things, both for libraries and the publishers and the book ecosystem in Greece in general. Thank you.
Because we are out of time, I will try to run fast. Some data, statistics are always welcome. I choose countries with a small population and unique language like Greece. So they create their content in their language. So we can see some data, don't spend time, we can see just the number. Conclusions. Not good conclusions. A very low adoption of e-reading, very weak development of the book industry in this field. E-lending services only by the National Library of Greece. No acquisition policies by public libraries. This will guide in the future in gap in the collections. We need to think and see that, because libraries are not only to lend books. Libraries are there to preserve cultural objects. E-books are cultural objects. If you don't allow to buy them and to store and preserve them for the future generation, will be a gap in their collection, crucial for Greek civilization and culture. We see inequalities between center and the regions. We see inequalities regarding economic and social class conditions among the readers. We see many things. We need to make proposals. We're not just writing and documenting the findings. We need to have a step further. So, we need to recognize that libraries are key players in digital literacy for all people. That libraries are trustworthy institutions when they are operating within the legal framework, always. Libraries are not pirates. So there is a need for further support of the National Library of Greece reading room. We need to activate collaboration between all the stakeholders within the civil society, libraries, and publishing sector in Greece, and the collective society of Greece. We need to build up collaboration. We need all of us, the people working in libraries, the director of libraries, the people working in the rest of the creators, the authors, the people working to the public sector as a general, to change attitude, to change mentalities, to change our culture, because those are crucial, and those will guide, finally, to a more literate audience that will boost book industry in Greece. And this can happen, it's possible to happen only when libraries, public libraries, educate their audience to be good reader, to be good digital reader. The final report with all those in more details, including academic libraries data, will be released on January 2025 at the end of the month, I suppose, I hope, I'm optimistic. Stay tuned. Thank you for your attention.
Indeed, it is a very important research, and we are glad and we are thankful for the three speakers for presenting us the preliminary results of the research, of this important research, original, first done in Greece. There are many questions that may have in our minds. Keep them for the end, at the end of this event. So thank you very much again.